Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Keel. I'm a specialist for physical and health disabilities and traumatic brain injury with the Southwest West Central Service Co-op. Today, I'm going to share a brief overview of traumatic brain injury to spread more awareness about this low incidence disability category. So, what is a traumatic brain injury? Minnesota rule defines it as an injury to the brain caused by an external physical force, resulting in total or partial functional disability and or psychosocial impairment that may adversely affect the student's performance and result in the need for special education and related services. The term does not apply to brain injuries that are congenital or degenerative or brain injuries induced by birth trauma. To clarify, I'm going to give you some examples of types of brain injury. On the left is a list of brain injuries that do qualify under Minnesota rule for traumatic brain injury. These injuries include results from falls, motor vehicle accidents, sports injuries, assaults or abuse such as shaken baby, and military blast injury. The column on the right labeled non-traumatic are those brain injuries that do not qualify under Minnesota rule for TBI. This includes kids who've had a stroke, had a tumor, lost oxygen or became hypoxic, had an infection such as meningitis or encephalitis, or had a brain injury due to toxics of drugs or alcohol. So the injuries on the right under non-traumatic may qualify for special ed services in another disability category, such as other health disabilities, but they do not qualify for services under TBI at this time. Here's a slide to show what happens to cause brain injury. Stretching or tearing of neurons can cause loss of signal between the brain and the body. So lost signals means altered body functions, right? Bleeding. A torn blood vessel may leak into nearby tissue. This kills brain cells and can lead to a buildup of blood called a hematoma. If the blood presses on the brain, it can cut off blood to other cells. These cells also die. A third occurrence is swelling. The brain has almost no room to expand inside the skull. If the brain swells and it falls against the skull, it creates pressure, and that pressure increases, and then the brain functions may be altered. Moving on from the scary stuff, let's talk about how the brain can recover. Hopefully you know that brain cells or neurons can repair themselves. This is what happens in a mild concussion or mild injury. A person just needs rest. And rest means a break from cell phones, TV, video games, large group, reading, anything that is going to make the brain work. This is why it's so important to sit kids out after they receive a hit or a fall, because the neurons might be stretched and going back into play could cause them to tear. Another way the brain can recover is through the power of plasticity. This means the healthy portions surrounding the damaged areas can vamp up their connections and respond for the injured area. And the third way is that the brain can rewire growing new pathways. We're never too old to learn new tricks, right? Lastly, individuals can start rehab where they would relearn forgotten skills, learn strategies to help compensate for their new weaknesses, using those visual aids, setting timers, reminders on your device, etc. This link at the top is a great site to show students and parents. When you click on each part of the brain, a new page shows up that focuses in on that specific part of the brain and its functions. For example, if you clicked on the frontal lobe, it would zone in to explain this is where executive functioning occurs. Many injuries happen in this area, so that's why kids struggle with organization, planning, and problem solving after injury. It may help to think of the brain kind of like jello. It's a spongy material inside the bony skull. When the brain receives that blunt blow to the head, obviously that part of the brain that receives the blow is going to be impacted. However, since the brain is floating inside the skull, it will bounce back and forth and around like jello, which is called contracoup. causing more damage to other parts of the brain besides the area that received the impact. So that's why even though kids received a blunt to the front part of their head, they may also tend to have vision issues, blurred vision, double vision, headaches, migraines, because the brain bounced back and around and forth, impacting that occipital lobe that's responsible for vision. So since we know accidents happen, which means a TBI can happen, how can we support students who receive a traumatic brain injury? Well, you can support them by helping them understand what happened, and which will help explain why they may not be able to do the things they once did. I may say this a couple times, TBI is a hidden disability. A student may return to school and they look the same, but inside their brain, things may not be wired the same as they were before injury. They might have to learn new ways to do things, or they might learn a bit differently than they did once before their injury. Which brings me to the second point, that kids may have new academic challenges. I know students that used to be really good at reading or really great at math, and now they struggle with the concept. That's emotionally and psychologically frustrating for them. So by accommodating and letting them maybe listen to text or have copies of notes or use a checklist to show what they've completed and what they have left to do, those tasks may become less frustrated. And now we can talk about behavior changes too. Kids who have brain injury, they may look spacey to you, may be more quiet. They're just not trying to gain anyone's attention at this point. They might be totally wiped out or totally lost in the discussions. So check in with those kids discreetly, see if they need that checklist or a starting point, or maybe just a break. Let's talk about protocol for after injury. Nationwide, there are 2 protocols in place to support students. One is called Return to Learn, and the other is called Return to Play. I'm sure your school has a designated person for Return to Play. It's usually the athletic director. After injury, a player sits out to rest, checks in with their physician, takes that concussion test, and when the student is ready, they return to play. I'm hoping that schools also have a designated person for the Return to Learn protocol. It would be wonderful for every school to have a contact person who can connect with the student to help them ease back into school. 2 options to support students after a TBI include a 504 plan or a referral to special education. Remember, a 504 plan is where teachers, parents, the student, and administrators sit down and figure out what accommodations the student will need to be successful. If you do a special education evaluation, if that student qualifies to receive special education, then they will get those same accommodations, but they also get modifications and have some specialized instruction from special education staff. Here are some recommendations to follow for students to return to learn. You can hold a meeting with parents, teachers, support staff. Doctors can Zoom in now, or they can provide written documentation of the progression of steps back to school. The meeting will just help everyone get on the same page on how to ease the student back to school. And then have that contact person at school, someone the student feels comfortable with, to advocate for them throughout the day. Check in with them daily. And there are so many forms available to help with this process on any of the sites that I'm about to show you. Here's one site. The CDC recommends that the school identify the types of symptoms the student is experiencing. Try to find out the specific factors that make a student's symptoms get worse so that steps can be taken to modify those factors. For example, if there's classes or subjects or tasks that appear to pose a greater difficulty to the student compared to their pre-concussion performance, acknowledge those. If there's a specific time of day that the student is able to work without becoming fatigued or getting a headache or a specific amount of time, whenever that student starts to have symptoms, headache, nausea, blurred vision, some attitude, then that expectation or task needs to be altered. Healing will not occur, and actually more damage could be done if a student doesn't ease back into school. Students could return to school with an altered school day, plenty of accommodations such as having a room to take a break, receiving those copies of notes, maybe wearing sunglasses or hats to reduce the glare of fluorescent lights, removing distractions, just to name a few. Here's another great site. This one comes from the Colorado Brain Injury Alliance, and this site talks about the building blocks of learning shown here in pyramid form. The bottom tier develops first, and as a student ages, the other tiers develop. On that site, when you keep scrolling down from the slide that was just shown, you will see that the building blocks are actually listed in a column on the left. So when you click on one of the building blocks, like I clicked on inhibition in this slide, you will see a bunch of resources pop up on the right. You will see behavior impacts, cognitive impacts, assessment suggestions. If you keep scrolling down, it will give you certain accommodations that would be appropriate. So it's a wonderful, wonderful site to help you with a specific area where the student is struggling. Brainline.org is another national site to support educators in understanding what accommodations would be appropriate. There are resources here for parents, for students, for educators throughout the site. You'll notice there's a little camera icon on the slide, which means that there's a little video to support that area. And this is powerful to show students some of the videos, and because in the videos, they're actual students who are struggling, and they talk about what they did to overcome their new challenge. CBIRT.org is an organization out of Oregon, and it's again nationally known for its TBI resources. The two things I want to point out on this website is that there's free training called Staff TBI Skill Builder. So maybe during a CLP, a group wants to get together to watch these videos to learn more about TBI. You will receive a certificate after you've completed the sections, which you could use towards your relicensure. So there you go, free webinars. The ones on the bottom are just every month they try to have a new video to support. So there's lots of different types of videos here. Again, you would just receive a 1-hour certificate to support more of your understanding of traumatic brain injury. Here's that CDC site again, and it just has a bunch of resources to print off. You can post them around the school if you want. You can add your own school logo to some of the resources. So please, please, please don't try to create something. It's out there. And if you're ever looking for resources or looking for a handout, a process on steps to follow when a student is coming back to school, please just shoot me an email and I'll try to support you as best I can. In closing, I just want to remind you that there are trillions of neurons in our brain, so no two brain injuries are alike. Every kid will be different. TBI is a hidden disability. Individuals may look the same after injury, but they may struggle socially or emotionally, academically, or physically after that injury. So the link at the bottom of the slide is an hour-long recording from Hennepin Healthcare, and it's about a very severe brain injury individual and its impact on the whole family. I do also have a list of books if you are looking for some fun reading, or some are survivor stories. But if you're interested in learning, reading more about this topic, just reach out to me. I'm happy to share that. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I know I talked fast. I was trying to get this under 15 minutes, and I think I'm going to do it. Again, as a regional contact person, I'm available to support teams in identifying students with TBI, planning for their programming. My email and cell number was listed on the first slide. Have a great day.